members of the Hurley Hall, and Hall families, Eugene Holder, President of the Barbados Reiki Association, other esteemed dignitaries. Wait a minute, that covers everybody else, right? Members of the literary arts and wider cultural community, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It warms my heart to welcome you to this official book launch of Exploring Shadeism by Sharon Hurley Hall. My name is Sandra Seeley, and I'm honored to be your Master of Ceremonies on this momentous occasion for the author. So before we get started, just a little reminder to put your cell phones on silent. Of course, you can take lots of pictures and videos and put it on the gram, but at least have them on silent. So I thank you. You're all here like me to welcome and celebrate this milestone with Sharon, but we're also here to mark a significant contribution, not just to the analysis of the Barbadian social landscape, but to the Caribbean and global diaspora. However, I'm not going to get into all of that. I'll leave you to discover just what shadeism means to our society as we go through this evening, and of course, when you buy the book. It's only Barbados $35, so get your copy, and you do have the fortune of having the author here to sign it for you. So how do I know Sharon Hurley Hall? We're two Caribbean blogging nerds. You know, I realize that Sharon's name may not be familiar to a few of us in Barbados, not necessarily here, but because she's been killing it internationally, and might I add, mainly remotely, in the digital content game for years. That's only one reason this Caribbean content guru became a mentor and dear friend to me. I found Sharon in an internet search for Caribbean writers who blog when I got started as a blogger in 2007, and fooled with words and tech together. Yes, before it was cool and trendy like now, everybody's blogging. Basically, it was Jeffrey Philp, who's a retired Jamaican professor and author based in Miami, who's also a mentor to me, and Sharon Hurley Hall. Then I got in. That was it. We linked over this and many other things, like both being left-handed, having a distaste for Blogspot and Wix. You see, back then, Sharon wasn't working on making this a main plank of her writing business and exporting her expertise like I was trying to do. She was already doing it in her totally chill confidence with humility. So it was a while later, I think a couple years, that I asked Sharon, "So where are you?" Offhandedly, she replied, "Oh, in Christchurch." What? But today we're here to discover yet another facet of this indomitable writer through Exploring Shadeism, Sharon's first book in print. Now, at this point, I'll let you draw your own conclusions about Sharon Hurley Hall, and perhaps even those who know her well, you'll learn something new. So you can watch this video with me. So how many of you learned something new about Sharon? Okay. So, writing can be a pursuit followed in solitude, which, believe me, isn't necessarily a bad thing all the time. However, it is crucial to have support and love and encouragement, especially when we meet those valleys of frustration. I want to share some well wishes from someone who couldn't make it here this afternoon. It's a message from someone dear to Sharon, her sister, Lisa Hurley. in Jersey City in the USA. Haha, I surprised you, didn't I? Lisa is a social media manager and herself a writer. Lisa says, "Congratulations, sis! You're officially an author now. I'm not at all surprised that you've achieved this major goal, because that's kind of what you do. Set audacious goals, make a plan, and then implement them like it's no big deal. I'm so very, very proud of you as a human being and as a writer. I can only hope to be just like you when I grow up." Sorry that I couldn't be there to celebrate with you in person, but you know that I'm doing a happy dance for you across the miles, and that I'm there in spirit. The topic of shadeism, as you know, is still timely and relevant today. Much harm has been done to the diaspora as a result of positioning specific skin tones and hair textures as ideal. By putting your book out into the world, you are contributing to the awareness of this form of discrimination, the discourse around it, and hopefully the healing from it. Kudos to you. So stand in the spotlight. Enjoy your moment. I know it's not really your thing to be the center of attention, but bask in the attention for now. It's so very well deserved. You done good. Love you, little sis. And now, I'd like to invite yet another amazing creative in Sharon's life to share with us. Linda M. Dean is a writer, poet, editor, and publisher, a creative writing instructor, aka the summer storyteller, and one half of the outfit known as Arts Etc., Robert Edison Sandiford being the other. She is an avid Scrabble and Words with Friends player, which is sort of how she regards the author as a Scrabble boss and a good friend with words. Welcome Linda Dean to offer brief remarks.
Thank you very much, Sandra. Welcome, and hi everybody. It's just good to see all these faces, it really is. I was sitting there, twisting in my seat, getting a stiff neck to watch that video about Sharon. It was worth it. It was worth a stiff neck, okay? We learned some good stuff. I just want to say up front, congratulations. Congratulations, Sharon. I am so pleased and proud of you and fussy for you. I really am. I consider Sharon, well, let's put it this way. I met Sharon, I'd have to say, through my sister, Sue, right there in the audience. But I really met Sharon over a Scrabble board, all right? Sharon, what did not come up on the board is that Sharon is an expert Scrabble player and a Words with Friends player. And I'd say over the last 25 years, 30 years, we have gone back and forth over Scrabble boards and with the Words with Friends. I'd say, let me see, I remember evenings in Southampton, in my flat in Southampton, or Sharon, when you were living in Nottingham. Right, in Nottingham, we've got a bottle of red wine on the table, the Scrabble board there, and she is beating me. Like, beating me, I mean, like, mercilessly. We play 10 or 12 games back to back to back, and if we played 12 games, she would win 11. Right, and it's only now with the advent of Words with Friends that we kind of level the score a bit. But it's taken like 25 odd years to do that. I consider Sharon that friend with words. Okay, we play Words with Friends, but she is a dear friend with words. And she takes care of other people's words, and I am certainly about that. In my role as a writer and editor and a publisher, that's what I like to see. Writers taking care of each other and each other's words. And as an editor, and as a social media advisor, That is what Sharon does. I hate social media. I'm barely on Instagram, half on Facebook, and Twitter, I don't even know my password. But Sharon advised me how to manage my presence, how not to hate having to go online to promote what I do as a writer, as an editor, as a publisher, as a creative writing instructor. And I like that she cares. She cares for the writer and she cares for the writer's words. And I see that caring, same caring, in the publication of this. Okay? Those of you who know Sharon very well know that she is a strict timekeeper. And I think, let's put a full stop, she's a strict timekeeper. And I'm amazed that she has so many late birds among her friends. Right? But in addition to keeping good time, she also is aware of the timeliness of actions and events, right? What to do in your life. Okay, this came out of Sharon's master's thesis. How many years ago? 20 years ago. Okay, so it may be that old, but she published this. She's publishing and launching it now at a time when we couldn't need it more, right? In a political way, right? This is the time of Black Lives Matter, and I know you made that point. You felt this was your contribution to that debate as a social debate, a cultural debate, and a political debate. Timeliness, okay? As a contribution to the world of publishing in Barbados, the Caribbean, and beyond, timely. Barbadian writers are having a serious moment right now. We are beginning to push outwards. Our poets, our short story writers, our novelists, our filmmakers. I call them all storytellers. And even though this is a work of nonfiction, this is research, right? But it's also a story, right? It's giving us a story and reasons why we are how we are, right? So I would like to see. Okay, I'm a poet, right? I don't think we need any more poets on the landscape. We clutter it up, maybe. I don't know. But I want to see more of our storytellers, more of our writers contributing the stories in different ways. And this is a story that you've contributed. So as an act of publishing, as an act of writing and publishing, timely. Also as a teaching tool, as an act of education, timely. Sandra and I are creative writing instructors. This is what we do, and it's a hard job. Yes, it is. Right? It can be scary at times. How many times have I been into a primary school and asked a class to draw a self-portrait to go along with whatever they're writing about themselves? And say you've got a class of 35 6- and 7-year-olds. There will at least be 4 or 5 young black Bajan girls who will not draw themselves as they are, right? So they will draw themselves with blue eyes when they have beautiful dark brown eyes. They will draw themselves with blonde hair. They may shade in the skin, right, and some shade of light brown or light yellow, or they may leave the paper blank, but they will not color themselves in to reflect their own beautiful melanin in whatever shade it is. This book is a teaching tool. I think it will provide adults, parents, teachers, creative writing instructors such as ourselves the tools to get to know this topic better, and then pass that will enable us to teach those little 6- and 7-year-old Bajan girls, right, able to guide them much better. So that, I thank you, right? We need real tools in our toolkits as teachers. Thank you. To return to my words with friends analogy, there is a saying that when you use all 7 letters on the board, bam, it's called a bingo, right? If you can land that word, that 7-letter word on a triple word tile, and a triple letter tile. Oh my gosh. Well, then you've just wiped the board with your opposition, all right? Sharon, this is a bingo, and you're a word girl. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, after that endorsement, I don't know what else you need to hear to buy the book for yourself and for a few others, and recommend it and share it. She was talking about social media. Let's give back to Sharon by sharing on social media. It could be the cover, it could be the review, all right? Or you could do your own little review on Goodreads and so on, all right? So I'll stop there. Now, to the pièce de résistance, to hear from the author herself. Now, first, when you consider it, more than 1,000 LinkedIn connections, 3,700 Twitter followers, 625 Facebook likes, more than 1 million words, that's mind-boggling, written since 2016. And imagine, she was writing before that, so it's definitely over the million. Longest article was an 8,000 word plus SEO guide for Opt-in Monster. Chief wordsmith, how fitting to use that title. Sharon Hurley Hall is an accredited professional writer with more than 25 years of experience, who helped to develop and teach the master's program at Coventry University. She holds master's degrees in media and cultural studies and in teaching and learning higher education. She is certified in content marketing and email marketing. And yet, with all of these impressive acknowledgments and her work that keeps her very, very busy, Sharon seems to effortlessly bring light to those in her sphere. As a mother, daughter, wife, sister, arts activist, volunteer, Reiki practitioner, friend, sister spirit. Please stand and give love and rousing applause to the author of Exploring Shadeism, Sharon Hurley Hall.
Okay, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here to share this momentous occasion with me. Before I go any further, I'd like to give my personal thanks to Ethne Weeks, David Yard, and the team here at Dover Beach Hotel for working with me assiduously to make this launch happen. Thank you. A round of applause. To Sandra Seeley and Linda Dean for their invaluable help and advice. Let's give them a round of applause too. I can honestly tell you this launch would not have happened without this, because when I said, how the heck am I going to launch a book, the first person I called was Linda and the second was Sandra. Okay, to the many friends and family who have helped. I mean, you know, my mother is here, she did this wonderful silk flower arrangement. My husband is there handing out cards. My daughter's running the video. You know, everybody in the family is here. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you all. So they say every book has a story, and this book is no exception. You could say that the seeds of Exploring Shadeism were sown when, at the age of 12, I moved to Barbados from Trinidad. Now that was a trip. Walking around the grounds of Queen's College, it was interesting to me to note what appeared to be a big difference in racial and social dynamics from Trinidad. Now, admittedly, I was 12, so there were probably things I was not aware of in Trinidad, in, you know, subtle tensions among ethnic groups. But at the time, on the surface, everybody seemed to be in a melting pot. And when I moved to Barbados, it seemed very different, because there was a little bit of self-segregation taking place, often according to ethnicity or shade, both at school, which is where I noticed it first, and in other areas of life. As I later learned, it wasn't quite that simple, but that's what it looked like at the time. Now, any non-Bajan will tell you, and I know there are some in this group here, that the distinction between red, yellow, and brown in skin shade, not to mention all the shades in between, can seem an impenetrable mystery to those not schooled in it from birth. I mean, I've been living here since 1977, and I still do not get it, okay? But I ignored the puzzlement and just kind of got on with life. As I lived in other countries over the years, I continued to pay attention to issues of ethnicity, which is a personal interest for a dark-skinned black woman who was often compared unfavorably by outsiders to lighter-skinned family members, especially after moving to Barbados. Of course, as a side note, it later turned out that issues of shade are not only within the black community. As a young mother, I came across white Brits who thought I was my own daughter's nanny. But that's another story. Fast forward a couple of decades and I was in the UK, having finally decided I was ready to do postgraduate studies. And it seemed to make sense to me at the time to do something that tied together my years in journalism with my other interests. So the ability to study questions of inequality in media and questions of identity were major selling points in my decision to pursue an MA in Media and Cultural Studies. Anyone who's ever lived overseas also knows of that occasional or sometimes regular longing for connection with home. I wasn't immune to that. So when the time came to choose a dissertation topic, picking something related to Barbados seemed an obvious choice. This wasn't just because it gave me an excuse to fly back to Barbados, though I won't deny that was a bonus, right? It was because I wanted to do something that was rooted in my own experience and culture. I may be, and in fact I am, an unashamed Anglophile, but I'm also a Caribbean woman. So at the time, the issue of shadeism, which is now more popularly called colorism, had hardly been studied explicitly. There wasn't a lot written about it, but there were clues if you knew where to look. And I really wanted to find out whether shadeism was as much a phenomenon as it had seemed to me as a child in those early days in Barbados. But I didn't just want it to be a dry academic study. I mean, Lord knows we have enough of those, right? I wanted to get information from real people who were living the experience. So to achieve that, I sent questionnaires out to people, some of whom I knew and many of whom I didn't. I visited news groups and online chats with Caribbean people. Now imagine, this is before WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger and all this kind of thing, right? So this was not an easy undertaking. So I asked some questions, and then I did a few face-to-face interviews with people who had given interesting responses. So that material became part of my research, and it's responsible for many of the quotes you see displayed here and on the postcards that have been handed out. Of course, I had to do the academic bit too. So I turned to Caribbean history and literature to see how writers like Hilary Beckles, Walter Rodney, John Hearn, and Andrea Gollop, yes, Andrea Gollop, had tackled the issue, and to examine what had led to shadeism. And what I discovered was that it wasn't just in my mind. Most people found that shade discrimination was common in Barbadian society, and that actually applied even to people who had not personally been affected by it. And people had mixed feelings about their skin shade too. I actually asked, one of the questions I asked was, if you could take a medicine to be darker, A, or lighter, B, which one would you choose? So I'm now going to read an edited excerpt from the book with some of their responses. Respondents were presented with a choice of being 2 shades darker or 2 shades lighter. This proved a difficult question for many to answer, with 1 or 2 respondents describing the question as sick. One even said, "We are all equal under God's eyes." Over 30% of men said they would be lighter, while 27% said they would be darker. Over 27% of women chose to be lighter, and 35% chose to be darker. Reasons for choosing lighter range from being more photogenic to being more natural, while some people preferred to be darker to avoid skin cancer problems, and there was a general feeling of being happy the way they were. Some women who were light-skinned didn't want to get any lighter. Some of the comments from those who said they would choose to be lighter included, "It's easier to regain your natural skin color if lighter. Also, I think a lighter skin color would make me more attractive. It's also a more accepted skin color." Someone else said, a man, "I am dark enough." And a woman said, "I am the darkest of a mixed couple's children, and it would be less conspicuous to be lighter." Another woman commented, "To be 2 shades darker, I feel that I would be pressured or mocked by my peers and society as a whole because of the way in which they're socialized, and would be subjected to even greater discrimination. To avoid all the problems associated with very dark skin, I would choose medicine B. Another comment was, I would choose medicine B because I'm already light-skinned and I like my color. I don't know what being darker feels like. And another woman said, I find I'm more attractive when my skin shade is lighter. And finally, although I know it is silly, I would not want to have to deal with all the comments about how dark I've become. Like, we know we've heard those comments, right? People act as if it is a sin to be darker, and it is easier not to have to go through this. That resonates with some of the comments made by Walter Rodney on this issue. Among those who chose to be darker, comments included from one man, I'm already dark-skinned, and therefore medicine A would be more comfortable for me. As I'm happy with my dark skin, it would be less drastic than B. And a woman said, I would be very pale and sickly looking if I were 2 shades lighter. And another simply said, the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. I love being dark-skinned, said another woman. It's not that I don't like the lighter skin tone, but I personally feel I'm more beautiful dark. But some people had trouble making their minds up and couldn't choose either one. So one said, a lose-lose situation. I would be uncomfortable with either option. I have relatives and friends from cream complexion to chocolate to burnt. I appreciate their the beauty, and I don't know that I could make such a choice. And a woman said, I really don't want to be any shade other than the one I am. It's very difficult to gauge to what extent the responses given indicate a change in the perception of dark skin. Rather, I think that the questionnaires as a whole prove that people remain ambivalent about the issue. And as interviews later showed, the instinctive response may actually differ from the reasoned one. The fact that so many more women commented on this issue suggests that it is more personal for them. In modern society, there's a lot of pressure on women to be all things to all men, to conform to a certain image, and shadeism is another manifestation of that. Okay, so all of this happened, as both Sandra and Linda alluded to, quite a while ago. So why am I only now getting around to publishing this book? And there are 2 answers to that. One is technological, and the other is contextual. When I originally did the research, I was advised that it could be published. But at the time, very few publishers were taking a chance on unknown authors, and it wasn't that easy to go it alone. I didn't really know where to start. Fast forward to 2018, which is when I actually produced this book, and it was a different era. Self-publishing is on the rise as the technology is available to make it easy to do something like this. But I still needed one more nudge, you know. In fact, the publication of the book is a partial accident, believe it or not. Yes, it's something I've always intended to do, but it came about because I was following one of my other many tasks, which was testing a piece of software, something I do regularly as a web content writer. This particular piece of software lets you design and export your book in a format suitable for Kindle publication. I needed some text to test it with. My research popped into my site, and I like to think of that as serendipity. So I used it to test the software, and once it was done, it seemed to make sense to carry on, publish the book, and finally achieve my goal. You know, it took me a while to pay attention to this, but I finally got there. Publishing via Amazon was the obvious choice because it's simple and cost-effective, which is something all indie authors have to think about. Am I right?
You're right.
Right. So apart from the technology, there is the current context. So the last few years have seen stirrings in racial politics all around the world, from young black men getting shot in the US with heartbreaking regularity, to the rise of far-right parties in many countries, to the issues faced by the Windrush generation in the UK, and increasing numbers of young Asian women talking about colorism in their culture, the caste system in the Indian diaspora, and the continuing use of skin bleaching products among people of African descent are indications that this issue, the issue of shadeism, isn't going away. Here in Barbados, issues of shade still surface at school, at work, and in other contexts. In fact, only last week, someone mentioned to me that even in 2019, she's experienced both positive and negative consequences of her own skin shade right here in Barbados. Yeah? To my mind, that means there's never been a better time to explore again our relationship to both our colonial history and our current attitudes to color and shade. Thank you.
Now, that was really powerful. And to be able to delve a little more at this juncture, we're going to have a brief Q&A session. So one of our goodly, hard-working, behind-the-scenes team is going to pass the mic to you. So is there anyone that would like to ask a question? Okay. What you could do is if you could give your name and how you know Sharon and ask your question.
All right, hi everybody, I'm Susan Dean Beckles. I'm Sharon's friend for many, many years. From school days, yes, we met in school and she's a wonderful person, but never mind that. But I wanted to ask Sharon, even though I was aware that Sharon was writing this in its original format, I want to know, Sharon, how you felt when you made the decision to publish, how you approached, because you have to suspend fear when you share your work and your words and your heart, and I want to know how you approached that.
I think because of the way in which the publication actually happened, the fear was minimized. Because if I had set out to publish it, there are all kinds of ways in which I could have sabotaged myself by thinking about obstacles. But because I did it in the way that I did, I was testing the software out, and I put it in, and I thought, hey, this book looks pretty good. I don't have to do much to it. And then it's weird. I went to Amazon to upload the ebook version just to complete the process, and then a button popped up that said, hey, do you want to create a paperback? I said, heck yes, I do. So the fact that the process is, the technology makes it so easy, minimized the fear in publishing it. There's a lot more fear in actually launching it than there is in publishing it.
Yes.
Thank you, Sharon. Congratulations. My name is Norma Shorey, and so I'm the Norma Shorey. Didn't even know I had, had that impact. I'm curious, when you said that you conducted research, where did you do this? Was it primarily in Barbados? Was it Barbados, Trinidad, Jamaica, Caribbean, UK? And what sort of spread in terms of the responses? That's one question. Secondly, I have recently been sent a little clip about, actually a journalist, an article about some of the big challenges that Jamaican schools are facing with the school children bleaching their skin. I had not been aware of that at the school level. I mean, I know it's across our societies. I know that it's a big thing in Africa. But I'm just wondering if in other parts of the Caribbean you've found a lot of that, a lot of overt question, mention of that, both at and what age groups have you found that most prevalent in? So it's two questions.
Let me take the first question first. Most of the research was done in Barbados. I would say at least 3/4 of the responses came from people in Barbados directly. When I went to the news groups, I did broaden it out to people of Caribbean origin. But again, I think most of them were Barbadians living abroad. I didn't come across many people, because I think that was the scope at the time. Were I to be doing it now, especially now we have all these wonderful pieces of technology to make it easy, I'd be interested in doing a wider study across the region, and maybe even asking the same questions again, and then doing a future version of this book. So there was quite a spread in terms of age. People ranged from their 20s to their 50s in terms of responses. I can't remember the exact numbers now in terms of male, female, but more women responded than men. Yeah. I didn't get a lot of detail, turning to your second question, about practices that were happening in other parts of the region, but I know this is an issue that comes up all the time. I wasn't aware that it was happening so much in schools, but within our communities, people continue to use these products, no matter how many times you hear how bad they are for you. right? I had not realized that it had reached to that young level, that young age.
And this follows on from Norma's question about young children, school children, bleaching. I've heard that there are Barbadian school children who will walk with the soap, whatever that bleaching soap is, in their school bags, and that's how they spend their break times and their lunch times, washing and bleaching. I want to know what practical applications you have for your book.
Well, now that's a good question. I think a book like this is primarily a teaching tool to make people more aware. I think a lot of people are sort of aware that this is an issue, but you might think about it as something that affects a person here and a person there. A piece of research like this, which though limited does cross the spectrum of age and gender, right, can make people aware that it is more widespread, that it is something that is happening, that it's still happening today, if I were to update it, and therefore you could use it to make people aware of the issue. One of the things the book covers is some of the historical context. You know, one of the things that I found very interesting is there's a concept in the book called the somatic norm. And what this basically is what you believe to be the ideal skin shade seems to be consistent across a population, and it might depend on how your history develops. So in many former slave societies, the somatic norm is that whiteness is the ideal of beauty. But you might find in some, for example, when I looked at some South American ones where more mixing went on and where there wasn't legislation in place to segregate the black people, then the somatic norm was a different shade, right? So I think you can take research like this and you can say, okay, hey, not only is this what's happening, but this is why it's happening. And if you know why it's happening, then you can start to develop ways to deal with the issue, to say, okay, you know, I mean, do we really want to still be operating in a context that was imposed on us externally from several hundred years ago? So that's how I think it could be applied.
Okay, great. My name is Patricia Hart, and I met Sharon through Reiki. I wanted to ask her, was she able to examine Shadeism or compare any of it in Africa itself?
No, I wasn't able to do that via that particular study, Pat. But again, because I sort of keep an eye on things that are published related to it, and I think it would be something that would be worth further study, you know, were I to do a follow-on, which I'm kind of considering.
First of all, I noticed the floral arrangement, interesting. Obviously reflecting the topic of the book. Am I right? Secondly, somebody's asked about a follow-up. But I wanted to know whether you have found after 20 years, since you were 12, I said about 20 years, yes, whether the essence of the shades still exist in Barbadian society. I think you mentioned that, but at school, maybe you've got some feedback from Taryn. Does it still exist at the same strength as when you first observed?
Anecdotal evidence suggests that yes, it does. When I talk to friends and they talk to their children and we have all these different conversations that we have, they're still experiencing those same issues that we experienced at school. Whenever I tell anybody about the book and we start talking, they say, oh yes, I experienced that, or I know this person who, it's still going on up to today. As I said, I was at the National Library last week talking to somebody. She said she had experienced it. So I think, yes, it's still going on. Yes, it's still an issue. And yes, it's still in schools.
Hello, I'm Fran. I've known Sharon through Reiki for many years. And my question relates to the complex relationship between class, race, and color throughout the Caribbean, not just in Barbados. So my curiosity is, why shadism, although you said it, and would you consider doing more research into those other areas as well?
Why shadism was because this was the thing that was most noteworthy at the time. Yes, of course, there's always an element of class to these things. I mean, one of the things that you might, that has been noted, I think, in other contexts, is that people tend to adopt the behaviors that are prevalent no matter what the shade is. So I'll give you an example from another context. Journalism. There was a study done to see whether having more women in the newsroom would make the newsrooms better, friendlier, more loving places. What actually happened, many studies showed, is that the women adopted the same mores as the men. So when you talk about, you can have people of all skin shades who suddenly, get to a stage where they feel they have arrived. And what could happen, and I'm not saying that it does because I haven't studied it, but what could happen is that you could find that they continue to perpetrate those same behaviors, even though, they might look identical to the person that they are dissing, right? So I think yes, there probably is a class element. I haven't studied it, but I don't think that that's the only issue. Good question.
Good afternoon. My name is Sandy Harewood. I know Sharon from Reiki. Hi. Have you sought funding for this area of study? And will you be seeking more funding? Because it's very topical.
Well, now you're putting an idea in my head, Sandy. No, I have not yet sought funding. Sometimes writing and publishing is a bit like putting one foot in front of the other. You create a thing, and then eventually you publish a thing, and then you say, okay, now what do I do with this next, right? So now it's definitely something I would explore because I am interested in doing something, bringing it up to date and making it wider across the region. So I'll have to investigate those possibilities. So thanks for the suggestion.
If I was here late, if you dealt with the idea of the economic value of shade. And I say that because someone told me a story about a certain a singer and her audition. And they said to me that there were two people auditioning, and one had the look and one didn't have the look. One has now gone on to make mega millions, and the other one is still hustling around town. So I don't know, have you looked at that value? In fact, somebody actually said to me after the person really made it big for the first time, she had the right color. So have you looked at that at all?
No, I have not, Cheryl, but again, I should be taking notes because by the time I leave here this afternoon, you all will have written half the next book for me. It's definitely an interesting issue to explore. We certainly know that in the past, different skin shades were regarded as more marketable. And then, of course, sometimes you get the inverse where, there's this one breakthrough person, and once they've broken through, the glass ceiling recloses, right? So that's another issue to be explored at a later date. I can't really say much about it at this juncture, but it would be an issue that's worth further exploration.
Yes. Any other questions?
Very good questions.
Yes, very good questions. Lots of great engagement. So do we have any other questions?
Hi, I'm Beverly, and I'm asking if there's a connection between skin color and hair texture, and how does that correlate?
Oh, another good question. Yes. There's definitely a correlation. While the hair issue itself was not a main issue of this research, it actually came up because when people were talking about skin shade, they also talked about hair texture. One of the quotes I have displayed is about, when people talk about good hair and nice skin, they're talking about the straightness of the hair and the lightness of the skin. So it's definitely an issue that came up where the closer your hair is to a European texture, the more desirable it was perceived to be. I think these days there's still something in that. I don't know that it's so for everybody. You know, there are many people, myself included, who have been through straightening the hair and come out the other end and gone back to natural. But there are still people, I mean, you know, those products sell in bulk. People are still out there. You know, I would love to, that is actually, I think there's someone I came across recently who actually did a documentary. Somebody has recently done a documentary about hair. I can't remember who it was. Chris Rock, right. So I don't know that I need to go any further into that issue, but it's still an issue in all black communities. The hair issue seems to be part of related to the shade issue, or its own thing as well.
Well, that's very good. You did very well with getting engaged. That means that you're interested and excited about getting it for yourself. So thank you very much for sharing. That, of course, would have helped Sharon a lot and given her more inspiration to continue to the next iteration of the book, correct? Yes. All right. Well, then what I will do is to bring this part to a close. I'll make my own thanks from the list. Sharon would have, of course, made some personal thanks. But first, of course, Ms. Linda Dean, writer, poet extraordinaire, one of the best editors, for sure, on offering her keen insight on Sharon and the value of exploring shadeism. The Dover Beach Hotel for the space and wonderful refreshments we're about to enjoy shortly. And one other thing, their smiles. Don't they have great staff here? Yes. Thank you to them. For our PA system with our fancy 3 microphones, Sharon. Tech Media Rentals, we thank them. And Sharon would have mentioned the very talented Kathleen Hurley, her mom, for those beautiful flowers. And along with her mom, it was a team effort, Ms. Pamela Rudder, who would have done the draping. So that just really completed it. So I don't know about you, I need a picture next to that. And then we have an award-winning director who is our videographer, that's Selwyn Brown. And to start off and also end the evening with the right mood, with that soulful music, of course we have Susan Dean Beckles to thank for that. Thank you so much, Susan. We also have Science Station that would have helped with the production of Sharon's very popping pull-up banner.
And William Cummings, who designed it.
And William Cummings, who designed it. Thank you. There are, of course, 2 key people behind the scenes, hubby Stephen Hall and daughter Taryn Hurley Hall, for the love and undoubtedly plenty of sweat for their weeks, because you know everything would have started way before today. You're seeing them looking, you know, moving around smoothly, but I'm sure that Sharon had them quite busy for the last few weeks, right? Hard taskmaster. And all of you for taking the time to spend with Sharon on this, her milestone. So we thank you all for that. Now, before we move to the fun part of buying the book and getting the book autographed and of course having a picture, make sure that you stay to mingle and enjoy the refreshments, and also look carefully at those quotes, because they're very thought-provoking and they're intentional and they're all around the room. So it's almost a little bit like an installation of words and the cover art, which I think is wonderful. So again, thank you, and then when you're ready to leave, travel home safely. Yes, and the author is of course available to sign the books. And And also, the book, as she said, is available on Amazon as well. Thank you.